Good morning everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to do some work on my Just Because I Felt Like a piece. You know, those pieces where there's no deadline, there's no, oh, I must just get this finished. It's just somewhere to go to stitch for the sake of stitching. And this is what this piece is for me. It's like a little bit of time out, plus I really get to explore different techniques with these flowers because I've tried to get them all different, like when I cut them out, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. They're all slightly different, so I'm allowing myself to sort of dance around on each one doing a different thing. So it's real collaging. So I started stitching away and I'm like, oh, I like that, I like that. I better go and put the camera on because I'll have it a thing finished and it'll be just too hard to explain what I actually did. So might start up here. This little guy, I stitched heaps and heaps of gold beads on top of each other. Let me just, so it gave a real raised effect. So it's quite dimensional. You can see how he's crusted there. So I just kept layering and layering stitches. Then the actual little flower itself, I first started off with a plain pink thread and just popped the pink in. Then I went back with the variegated thread and it was this guy and that one. So I allowed this sort of to anchor the petal and then this to bounce some light around the petal. So when you're painting flowers with thread, you sort of don't discount what the artist has done before you, because at the end of the day, we're colouring it in, but then adding a little bit of whimsical feeling to it. So if the artist has bounced white around on the edge of the petal or through the center of the petal, they may have wanted the petal to look curved. So put your darker colors to the side leading up to the white, and variegated threads are a lovely way of doing it because your thread is going to drift through those colors and you can scoot around your flower, and you might want to lie this paler thread on a raised area, then it suddenly starts getting darker, or you could scoot to somewhere else in the flower and lay that sort of tone down. So really, really enjoy using variegated threads. Now, these guys are all Wonderfill pearl cottons, number 8s. Probably my go-to size of thread is number 8. Now, the next one is a daisy. Now with that, what I ended up doing is I laid down a DMC pearl cotton. These you buy in skeins at the local haberdashery stores. So using a daisy stitch, being that it is a daisy, I started putting down big loopy stitches. Let me just get a needle going because I'll do a little more so you can see the process that I did on that daisy. Then we'll get to some of the other flowers. So I've still got this thread here because I need to lay down the darker pink. Let me just get this pin out of the way because I've got something else going on just there. So what I'm doing is I'm laying down the daisy stitch at the end first. So it's just a simple lazy daisy. And then I'm working back towards the center. Oh gosh, need a knot, don't we? Then I'm working back towards the center of the flower. Not sure what I'm going to do in the center yet. With this type of piece, I'm just jumping all over the place. I'm not really focusing on one flower yet and finishing it, because sometimes I find that by leaving it a little bit, I might come across a thought working somewhere else on the piece. And I'm like, oh, that might work as a version of, or it gives me an idea of what to do over on the daisy. So you see how I'm just, see how this petal is here? The artist has drawn that there. So I'm going to follow that line and actually lay my petal out there. Yes, I've just created a gap, but what I'll do is I'll jump back now and lay the petal into that gap. So it sort of helps. If your petals all go down in a row like little soldiers, your flower doesn't look as natural. So it pays just sort of to stop for a moment and pop your petal down, and then lay another one on top back where you probably felt like you should have gone in the first place, and it just looks so much more interesting. I was watching someone on that TikTok where you don't really get to know who the hang the person is, but they do like little short videos, and I'm getting a lot of embroidery ones come through, and they were like jumping all over the place with their stitch, and then they come back again, and then they come back again, and it just layered it up, and it just made it look so interesting. Because they speed it up, it's really lovely to watch because you're sort of getting a snapshot of it really quickly. So you can see how I'm avoiding the center, and I'm just focusing on that outer rim, coming a little bit past my cutout flower, so that I'm sort of taking the edge of my fussy cut fabric in underneath my stitches. So I'm just going to finish that off. I've been working a little bit on the seed stitch too. I don't have anything at the moment really with seed stitch on it, and I like to do seed stitch of an evening when I don't have to think and I just relaxing and watching a TV show or a movie. So I've been working seed stitch right in around this. You see the light can show you where it is. I'm yet to do this side of the stem, but I've done this side of the stem. So you can see how it hides your cutout. So I'll come right through underneath the bird. I then one evening worked this area over here, just drifting my way. I get on a bit of a line, I come down to her and then up to this corner. So now I've got like a little pocket. I could leave that free or fill it. Who knows? I sort of tend to scoot around all over the place and then come back and I might go, no, I will fill that in, or gives you an opportunity that maybe an idea will jump into my brain and I might stitch a flower in there instead. So that's sort of how I approach seed stitch. I don't necessarily just work right through. I tend to jump around a little bit. Keeps it a bit more interesting too. So I'm just going to lay down the inner layer of petals now. So I've got another piece of thread. Then I'll pick up that pale pink that's sitting here, and that'll be the final layer. So now the artist has made these little petals here quite short and stumpy because they want that flower to sort of feel like it's panning down to the ground. Does that make sense? I don't even know if that's the technical way to do it. So I'm going to follow suit and just put little lazy daisies in. Now, they're not 100% easily seen, but it doesn't matter at this stage. We're just building up the background. Don't underestimate the good old lazy daisy stitch. A little while ago, I was doing a class with Jennifer Colston. She has the book Foolproof Flowers and a couple other project books focusing on crazy patchwork, crazy quilting. And she had me doing lazy daisy stitch in ribbon. Now, as you finish your lazy daisy stitch off, before you go and do another petal, she had me doing pistol stitches at the end of them. So that's a little stroke with a knot. She had me doing bullion knots at the end of them. And when they're in ribbon, oh my goodness, didn't they just look absolutely beautiful? So very impressed with the old lazy daisy. It's one of those stitches I grew up doing. It was always the stitch on a doily, and it became quite boring. That and blanket stitch. Oh my goodness. I very rarely do blanket stitch now. It's just, I don't know, it's one of those childhood stitches, thinking there must be more to life than more blanket stitch. But Lazy Daisy has jumped back into my world because who would have thought at the end of the daisy petal you could put a bead or a pistol stitch or a bullion knot. It's just crazy what you can do with stitches when you start really thinking about combinations. So I've got a little bit of thread left, so I've scooted back out to the perimeter, and I might be able to get 2 more out of that, just working on that outer rim again. I'll lay down another one in between those two. Whoops. And my thread has given away from the needle. All right. Let's get one more stitch out of this piece of cotton and then we'll, yeah, got it. And we'll finish it off. So what I'll do next is I will pick up the pale thread. I just need to knot this, guys, sorry. Well, at least weave it through. It's got a bit short, being a bit stingy there. All right, let's find this guy. So I've got the outer rim and then I've got a layer of little ones inside. Now this is where we really start to show the shape of the flower. So remembering the artist did little stitches through there to make it look like that daisy was drooping a little bit to the ground. So what we'll do is we will follow suit and start reducing the size of my stitch. That's it. I'm trying to keep it a little bit looser too, because if I am too firm with my stitches, I'm going to be pulling the fabric in. So now I'm going to go really small, just to help. And I'm also building up, have I got enough thread? I'm building up the thickness here, as this is like the 3rd layer, so it's actually getting quite bulky here, which makes that center look even deeper, which is really cool. So I could either build up that center so it too starts looking quite lumpy, or keep whatever I put in there really fine so that makes it look even deeper. There we go. See how we're changing the size of those stitches? So I'll keep it quite small across the front. So let's see, will I get one more? How stingy can I be? No, look, come on. Get yourself another piece. It'll end up unthreading and then wasting time. So once again, this is also pearl cotton. It could be, let's have a look, DMC 605 pearl cotton. I think that's one of those stranded ones. But there's so many out there now. And some of them, I swear they come from the same factory. It's just a designer puts their, or a company puts their brand on it, because I get them and I'm like, I've seen you before. I've worked with you before. So you can find, you can find a few crossovers. Okay, let's just lay down a couple more of these internal ones. It really is starting to give the flower its shape. Oh, I love doing this. It's so, especially when each flower is different, it's really fun because it allows you sort of to be creative again on top of what the artist has done. And you don't have to think too much because they've got that shape. You can see all the petals changing in size there. So as long as I remember that they're little, because of course once you start painting it with thread, you can lose, you know, the look. Now there's nothing stopping me coming back, which I might do with another colour and doing some little petals again over it. You know what flowers are like, they're pretty amazing. So that I will have to now lay down this and then the rest of that before I can continue with that pink. So we'll leave it at that for now, and we'll think about what goes in the centre another day. Now let's move on, like Scatterbrain here wants to move on already. This one here, let me just start at the beginning. It sort of looked like that. That's the same flower, but the artist has put a little bit more colour into this one. It's a little bit moodier, darker. This one was quite pale. So you wouldn't think it was the same flower, really. I think in the last video, I stitched down this little piece of feather yarn. Then I filled it full of different sized pearlized beads. Now what you haven't seen is I then did a line of pistol stitches here. So a little stitch with a knot on the end in wool. So that gave it that little fanned inside. Then I started thinking about the lace, which I did talk about in the video previously, but that lace may have been one of these other flowers. I can't remember now. So I ended up putting 2 here. Then I got that feather yarn, this stuff, and I put a piece that's tucked in under there, coming around to the front again. So it's like this is nestled with this underneath. But before I started all that, the artist had these little dark areas through this very pale pink. Now, see how there's a pink and then there's a white? I had planned that I was going to stitch that, and then this whole lace thing happened. So this flower's got quite random. But I still have this little crease of wherever the artist put this dark colouring, I've stitched in my dark colouring. So if I find through like this zone here, it's a little bit tight to do anything too crazy. So let's call this crazy. So over here, I might find some wools and continue with the little bit of cream, little bit of pink, like settle it down a little bit here. But then in little areas like here, we'll put in some crazy, which is the leaf, the petal of lace. So let's get my needle and thread going. So it's going to be a combination. And it's like letting the eye settle for a moment and just having a look at the petal and what I've done, but then it goes thick and lush again. I don't even know how to describe it. You know what I mean, don't you? Do you? So see the stitches underneath? So now I'm going to bring in this little piece of lace. So I still see the pop of that stitch prior. I just pulled the needle right through. So just slow down, girl. Let the knot settle. So I'm going to stitch down this little piece here. So the lace I used was this one. So I've cut out 1, 2, 3, 4, those little guys. See these little circles below that look like little wagon wheels? I ended up putting them over here. There were 3 little wagon wheels. Then I put a sequin and a bead in the center of this flower. Now this little guy is the sister to that little guy, except he's got gold beads in the center. So you can see how you can really mix it up when you go to a different area of your piece and try something different. And like this is a just because piece, so it's really is exploring ideas just because I feel like it. So I'm sort of playing. Now I did mention that I've got coming up a project starting in spring where I'm picking 4 beautiful pieces of fabric and I'm going to embellish them like I am here. And they are all themed to the season. So for the month of the season of spring, that's the influence, summer, autumn, and winter. I'm still looking at pieces of fabric. I just can't decide. There's so many that I love, but it's really got to make me feel like the season. And I'm not 100% settled on them yet. Susanna from Vintage Blend Studio, she sells a lot of vintage and antique fabrics, trims and laces. Now, she has some pieces that once she heard what I was up to, she was like, oh, that piece makes me think of that season, and this piece makes me think of that season. So she's put together 4 pieces that she thinks what inspires her for the season. So once I get my hands on that and can have a little look at it, maybe one of those will slide into my selection. But to be honest, I only have winter. And I have about 7 pieces that could be each of the other seasons. So a little bit unsure. So technically, being in Australia, September 1 is spring. And yet I have a piece for winter. So I don't know what I'm going to do. Whether I start with winter or keep hunting for my spring. Not sure. Can't be making major decisions today. Just, it's not the day. Just want to flip around and think and plan and think and strategize, and it just feels like one of those days where I don't think I could decide even what sandwich to make myself. It's good. I like days like that. I feel like I'm at my most creative when the brain is loose and thinking. I usually tend to find that those days I go and tidy my room up, and then I start rearranging and picking up fabric and looking at fabrics, and I think, oh, I could do that with that, and yeah, it's good fun. See this little one here? I've got the base of it stitched down, but I haven't stitched the top edge because I have a lot of space there. I'm just getting that pin out of my way. I have a lot of space here potentially right through there that could be some of this. So I've left it so it's free, and I'm going to lay down that there and start stitching in a layer of this yarn again. So it's just about catching that bottom edge of it. Now, the great thing about this stuff is when you twist it in another direction, it suddenly fans out, which is perfect for flowers. So I'm just popping some little stitches in the back there just to catch the little edge of it. Take your time because your needle's going to get caught on everything. And then I'm going to bring it around and see by pulling it back in a semicircle, the little fibres have now just fanned out. Perfect for a flower. And how quickly it can fill up a flower. So you think you've got heaps and heaps of stitches to do, but when you start filling it with all these extra fibres, now I think I'm going to cut it off there. I think that'll be enough. Last stitch. Bring in. I just spotted out of the corner of my eye, and it must have been caught up in this, a piece of pink tulle. Look at that. Tiny little bit of pink tulle. Well, that has to go in. I think that. So let's pull those fibres forward. Where's my needle? Let's get the needle in there because I have a bit of space behind all that. So where did it go? Let's see how that would look in there. Oh yeah. There we go. See what I mean by just let it just happen. Just place in little morsels of bits and pieces that you might have rattling around on your desk. So I'm going to need to go and find more pink tulle, I think. I wonder what that came from. I better cut something out, and that was a bit that was sort of left from pinching something out of it. I'm just going to keep that shape, bring it around. try and tuck that pink. Now I guess if I don't find any more pink tulle, doesn't matter. These flowers are just random, just getting rid of that lace. I know I sort of want to go over there with it, but it's all getting in my way. So let's just get this stitched down. So now we've got a little tuft of tulle in there. I don't know if you can see that. So let's end this off and we'll go to the other side of this flower and we'll do a similar thing. Now I'll be on the hunt for pink tulle, for goodness sakes. I suppose if I don't find it, doesn't matter. Does not matter. So I've got two little pieces of lace here. So once again, you can see where the pistol stitches are through the center and then the little strokes. So that to me over here feels like it could be lace and up into this zone. So that's the plan. Thread. And then once I get that down, I'll then grab the yarn and see if I can backfill it with a little bit. Might do this guy over here. So let's get our needle and thread there. So if you're nervous about painting flowers with thread, don't be. What have I done? Just have a go. Just find a little piece of fabric that has a lovely little bunch of flowers printed on it. Can be any size, can be old or new. And then just grab your threads, grab some beads, and just see what happens. I think you might be surprised at how well it comes together. And try and keep it as random as you can. The moment you start sort of doing the same thing, it tends to look like it's the same thing. Unless, of course, you're doing a sunflower. But having said that, even a sunflower, you could really play with the petals of a sunflower, even though they are similar. There'd be no reason why you couldn't do some bead petals, some embroidered petals, some ribbon, mix it up. So that's my little piece of lace secured just with 3 little stitches. It has filled quite a bit of space. So now I'm going to lean him forward. You see how we've got this opportunity to put another layer of something. So it could have been another piece of lace, but I'm going to pop that feather yarn in there. Of course my needle becomes unthreaded. Like, seriously? Hasn't anyone invented a needle that never allows the thread to slide out? Why has that not been figured out? Okay, so now I'm just taking my time, because it is fiddly, and just catching the little pieces of this yarn. So once I've got the back of that flower sorted, or that lace, with those 3 stitches, I then got to decide where I go from here. Do I bring it back around to the front, or do I kick it up? I think I'm going to kick it back and head back out to the outer rim of that area, because I know I've got another piece of lace to fit in there. So when I work out what, so now I'm going right back. When I work out what I'm going to do for my base stitching again, like the pale and the white, just to backfill the actual flower, I'll be able to come back through any gaps that are exposed. So I'm just now going to, I think, kick that back in. And I'd be pretty confident my lace, probably should check it, will fit, nestle back into there. So let's just kick it back. So you see how I've sort of meandered across my flower? Now that technique I've used to some great degree on a flower over the other side, the carnation. So that's looking good. Now before we get too confident, let's bring the needle up and let's see where this little guy can come in and how we place him. Do we make him higher, or do we bring him right in on those pistol stitches? I think we bring him right in on the pistol stitches. Yes, I'm covering some work that is underneath, but that's okay because they're all sitting up. Anyone who wants to, you know, have a sneaky little look through is going to see all these little wall stitches in underneath. And that's not stopping me coming back and putting some beads in there as well for a little bit of sparkle. I think we're going to be doing that. So I'm just going to put 3 little stitches there to hold that. Let's have a play with the beads now that I've said the sentence out aloud. How are we going for time? Plenty of time. So what I'm going to do is I feel like I've got that pretty much secure. I'm going to change that needle out. Where's the beads? Thinking we pop some of these pink ones in. Don't think that needle will go through. We need to, we need Reginald. Reginald the bead needle. That's not even Reginald. Where are you, son? Here he is. Nasty little Reg. Let's not bite me, Reg. Let's just behave yourself. So I'm just going to now scatter little pink beads through there, and that's going to put a little sparkle in there. So between the lace, the feathers, what's not feathers, you know, feather yarn, now random little beads, you can see how it's becoming quite textured. So this flower is becoming quite interesting now. It's a good way of using up little scrappy bits too. I must find some more tulle. I don't know where that come from. So now I've just popped those few little beads there. I'm going to just bring that back, and there's a gap in here. So I might put a cluster of beads, and being that it's got a bit of space, let's put maybe 3 or 5. Let's really put a lump of beads in there. It's quite random. Just back in there. You can put 2 or 3 beads on your needle at one time. Go for it. I don't know. I tend to do 1 at a time. I don't know why. I could be so much more efficient. I think I like controlling the randomness of the beads. Otherwise, they can look like they're in a row. So we've got a cluster of beads now, tucked in amongst all of that yummy thread. Let's move those little feathers out of there so we can see them. And now what I might do is I'm going to move up to here and do another cluster of beads. I need some beads onto the mat so I can grab them easily. There we go. So I'm now just jumped up a little bit further, remembering I just want random little interesting spots. So whether I even come back through with the plain a pink and a white, I might not need to. I'm just going through that bead twice because I have been a bit lazy and only put one stitch in most of those. So I'm just going to pull that little feather out. I put another little bead. So in amongst the feathers and the lace are all these little encrusted bits. So we've got an opportunity. See how the petal, we've got this beautiful space here. I guess we can decide, do we do another row of lace? Let's get ourselves some bits. Cutting off that bottom part because we don't need it. We'll leave two together for now, as maybe that will fill it nicely. And we nestle him in there. Now it looks too similar to the two below. So what we might do is I will separate it. And maybe we just do the one, nestling it there. So let's put a stitch in. So we've sort of worked out our recipe for our flower, and now we're just repeating as we get to the perimeter of the petals. And that's it. Once you're sort of happy with where you're heading, it's just fill it in. Oh, don't catch on there. Hang on a minute, guys. My thread is caught around that top of the lace. It is a go slow. If you're in a bit of a racy mood, don't pick up this type of stitching because it'll drive you nuts as your thread catches. So now we've got that in place. I'm going to pick up that feather yarn and peel him back and see how there's a bit of an edge in there. Now you could make it easy on yourself and have stitched this from the outside in like I'm doing with the daisy. Oh, maybe, but that hasn't happened. I've started in the center and gone out. Have a look at this. Maybe we put a bit of that around the perimeter. Yes, that's what I'm going to do, just to give it. I haven't disconnected this. Let's get rid of him. Or I stay with my recipe and just put that around the outer edge. I don't know. I will decide, but I'm not going to now because there is a leaf there. I really, for the sake of my sanity, I need to work that leaf, then work out what is going to be the edge. Maybe I find some more of this pink tulle and work pink tulle around the edge. You see what I mean by you've got plenty of options. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to end that off. And I will focus on, I can get a better needle now. I don't need Reginald. I can focus on just stay around the center, working my way out, and then the final decision for another day what will be the edge of this. I'm thinking. So, right, we've got a plan. I think that flower will come together nicely, and we could do something tricky around the perimeter. So I'm going to just pull away from that flower for now because I really need to keep building the center of it with all of these different textures. I've got another little petal here cut out, ready. he can slide in there. Let's stitch him in. We've got time. Here's a needle with a little bit of cotton on it. I only need a little bit. So I'm going to just catch that one down. Then we might go to the carnation next. Gosh, 40 minutes. Like, seriously, where does the hour go? Oh, have I not got a knot? That's where the hour goes. Me struggling putting knots in pieces of cotton. Okay. So I'm just need a couple little stitches just to tack in that lace. Now I'd put a couple little beads in there too, but I won't do that now because I think you got the general gist of how I'm layering up this little piece. And like I said, right at the very end, I'll come back with wool, maybe in white or pink. I've just caught some of those little fibres. Let's get them standing back up and decide whether I need to backfill even more with a little bit of wool. Maybe there'll be enough going on here that it'll feel quite full anyway. I'm thinking it might, but we'll see. Righto. So that little random piece is now secure. My daisy's coming along. Now maybe this has potential for the center of the daisy. Yeah, I think it does. Let's have a look at this. That little wagon wheel. Maybe he could start forming up in the center. Let's stitch him in. He's in. I might do a combination because I don't have a lot of wagon wheels. There's only a few on there, and I would really be destroying that lace if I was to go and hunt out all those wagon wheels. So we will see how many more come of the flower next door, and then every wagon wheel that we get will just be a bonus. And then I think what we might do is, because that flower has that axis pointing down, we might put the wagon wheels around this edge of it, and then on the top side of the center of that flower. Oh, for goodness sakes, the thread is just not, it's gone. There it is. The beads or sequins, because it's sort of like quite a deep dish there, I think I could get quite brave and do something quite lumpy. Let's turn that wagon wheel around. See how it's got longer sides on it just by the way it's been snipped? Let's have those little fibres coming up. So I'm just going to stitch him in. I've lost the thread again. It's this jumper. See, I've got a furry jumper on. I need to get rid of it. It's catching the thread and pulling it out before I even realise that it's been removed, and the thread is caught up in my furry jumper. Who would have thought? Let's just get this little guy down. I don't want him to get lost too, and I think he's got potential. There we go. Now we're cooking. So we just need a couple little stitches. And then I think something like a sequin could be there. Like, let's have a look. I've got this little guy. He's like a pale pink. Let's see if one of those would look rather neat. So once again, keeping it random. Yes, definitely. Sequin. It's in. Now we need something to sit in the center of the sequin. Now we need something glistening, don't we? What about I think those, we'll keep it to a little 9mm. Pretty sure that needle won't work, so let's just not even go there. Pick up the needle, original, and we'll just use a little pearly. Let's get away. I could even put 2 on top of each other. How cool would that look? No. Looks like a tube. Don't like that. Let's ditch that idea. And just do the one. Now I might just position that up a little bit. So now we've got a wagon wheel and a sequined with the bead in it, starting to build up the center of that flower. See what I mean by it can be really random? It just makes the flowers look so interesting. And it's good too, because the more someone looks, the more they're going to see what you've been doing. Now I'm getting ahead of myself there a little bit because I haven't even finished the petals, but we do have a bit of a plan. So I'm going to just pull that thread out and let it loose, and then as I finish the rest of those petals, I know what I'm going to do in the center. So we've really figured out a plan for that flower, he's complete. The leaves I'll come back and do, but I have started one. I'm just tidying up my little mess here before there's a bigger mess. You know what beads are like. I'm going to knock them, and they are going to go everywhere. So I hope the camera is allowing this to stay in focus. I bet it's not. They're just not as easy to get focus anymore, especially when our hands come up. So, carnation. This little guy, let's get Reginald knotted up while you guys have a look at him. What I've done with that is a similar thing with the pink feather. I've got a hot pink feather here, and I've just meandered it around the base of this flower. Now the center of the flower is sort of up here. It's not in the center of that artwork. So I've really gone to town on the bottom half of the flower with the feather yarn. And then I've come through and put a diamond shaped sequin and the round sequin with the same bead in them. So we've got different shaped sequins scattered within the feathers. So that just makes those feathers look quite interesting. Then I'm like, well, what do I do next? So I started doing loops of beads. So I'm starting to get that three-dimensional petal feel again. And I'm just thinking I'm going to stay to the side and leave this center for a second, because maybe I find a piece of lace that can come up through the center, or I could maybe do some pistol stitches or some bullion knots. I don't know. At this stage, I just really like the way a line of beads on the thread, like so, gives me nearly a little petal, like so, and then just anchor it down. Take your time, because it's getting quite intricate in there. And that's it. So now I've got this little lacy beaded loopy. Now I might decide to put more through the center, but at the moment I'm going to leave the center free. I think one flew in there that wasn't meant to be there. Did one just shoot? Yeah, there it is. So we'll just work to the side. I was putting on about 7 or 9. And then, now while I stitch that down, have a look there. I'm starting to work one of the leaves. So it was a single leaf with a little side bit and a little side bit. So I'm working each little zone independent with a fly stitch. So I'm going to head there next once I get these little loopy beads happening. These would look great in the centre of a flower if you had a daisy type flower, and in the centre you could do some little loops of beads. It'd really create an interesting, you know, another layer if you had. So by the time this flower is finished, it is so not going to look like a carnation. Or maybe it will. I'm trying to keep it a little bit loose. Now at the moment they're sticking up in the air, but I might come back through and decide to put a little stitch in the top of them and pin them down. But at the moment I really like that they're quite tassely. So we'll leave it as is, but who knows? I guess it will depend on what's the element. Oh, hang, I just tipped them all off. Got beads everywhere. I'm starting to rush because I just looked at the time and we've only got like 10 so minutes left. I'm like, no, I haven't finished. I'm sure there was another one that went flying, but anyway, I'll pick up another 2. I'm going to tuck this one slightly in behind the previous one so that it's coming back into the flower instead of continuing the line to the outer edge of the flower. So you see how we've got this little, oh, I like that. I'm going to go back to the centre that I was leaving free, and I'm going to put loops in there. I'm liking how I've got this line of frilliness happening. I may not get to that leaf because I've got sidetracked. Gosh, I hope you've been on camera enough to at least see what the hang I'm up to. There we go, another little loop. Just going to do a stitch at the bottom just to make sure we just stay put. You know, at the end of the day, maybe that's enough and we let the artist that created the flower, let that pop up here. I don't know, we'll see. I'm going to finish off my thread because I feel like I have enough beads in there. Make sure I have a good knot because, gee, if that all let go, be a hang of a mess. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I love it. Got beads flying everywhere. So it's nearly like there's this big petally thing happening and then there's this little frill and then we've got this yet to deal with. What are we going to do in there? I'm tempted to leave it, let the artist do their thing. I wonder if, see now I'm sidetracked. I wonder if we could outline that. I wonder what that would look like. So we can then at least show there is a difference between that flower and that flower. So let's have a look. We might come through here where and just do a series of little stitches just sort of trace the outer edge of all that. Yeah, I'm going to keep them quite random. I'm not going to do a running stitch. I'm just going to scoot around the outer edge there with just little stab stitches. Oops, there's a knot. Now you guys probably can't see that real well on your screen, but it does look quite good. We need that lace. Just pin that lace down. We've got to get him up. Yep. It's just giving it a more of a defined line. That lace is caught again. Out you come. I'm going to sneak down into this petal a little bit. Yeah, I like that. You could even come through then with a gold thread and do it again. So it just becomes this very soft, scattered stitch, but it's stitched. It's making this fabric pop a little bit up. So it's looking like it's quilted, if that makes sense. Yeah, I like that. So even if I'm thinking I might put a few little random seed stitches in there of gold just to give it a little bit of a sparkle. I'm just following the artist's line of those clusters and pulling in my stitch quite firm, and it's making the petal bump up. And because the artist has put a paler colour here, that's now bulbous, and so is that. So it's just going to be a case of some well-placed stitches in the crevices of all these petals to get us a little bit of a quilted look in there. I think that's going to be what I'm going to do. I like that. I better just pull the thread out. So that's a sign just to move on. So that's what's going to happen through there. Just lots of little stitches to make that look bumpy and lumpy. Then I'll have a look at it and see if I need to come through. So you can see the one line there. There's a line there. I'll probably come back into here. I'll come around all that. That will puffy that up. I think that'll be good. Now, before I go, I know we've got 2 minutes, but you know, that's how it rolls. 2 minutes and a bit. What's it matter? I'm just grabbing some Appleton yarn, number 252. I love this colour. It works in well with the stitchery before me, this doily. And I'm doing feather stitch here. I ran out of yarn, so that's when I was like, just stop, Corrine, put the camera on. So I'm just going to continue sneaking this stitches in here to create my leaf. Just a little stitch now to secure that guy. So come up on the side, and I'm making sure I go past the cutout of fabric. See, here's how the fabric's there. And what that fabric too is doing is it's making my work feel a bit puffy, which is also cool. So I've come up over here, back down here, but I'm being lazy now. I'm bringing my needle to the center of my leaf, and that then allows me to catch that stitch down like so. So once again, and you can just adjust the shape and the movement of your leaf. So I'm going to try and nestle that into there as you go through there. So just working my way and then anchor it. It's my favourite stitch for leaves. Now you can come back over a leaf and do more stitches in a different thread, different green, to give the veins of your leaf as well. So I'll finish off this petal, this leaf. You're not going, you're working back this day. We're going to just stay here. It's only just on the hour now. We're good to go. I have new internet service at the house now, so I'm finding these longer videos, they're going up just as quick as anything. So I don't feel as, oh my gosh, the time is rolling on, I better go because I'll be here forever loading up videos. I'm sort of swishing myself around a little bit there to give that leaf a little bit of movement. So the artist before me on the fabric had one leaf. By stitching it in 3 sections, it looks like 3 leaves. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to work this little guy. So he will get his little point first. Then I come up on the side and on the side. That first stitch that I just did denotes, I guess, the depth of your V stitches. So don't be afraid to give it a decent stitch, that first one, because it really helps set up your V's going forward. Around we go, and then anchor that stitch down. I do have a little bit of, see there's stitches in there I did at the base of that carnation, so there's satin stitch in there as well. Gosh, the more you look, the more you see in these flowers, and that's what I love about them. They're like combinations of all sorts of thoughts. And if you do them over a period of time, you'll find your work becomes even more random and special. Just put it down, go and work on something else, and you'll be surprised how your work evolves completely differently to when you first started the actual project. So don't be afraid to have work in progresses in your room. Don't hate them because they are work in progresses. Just come back to them. There we go. I think that's enough. I've got my 3, got a little fella tucked in over here. The big guys come over that one a little bit, and then this one's come over the big guy. So it's just created a little nice cluster. So that thread, I've got plenty left. I might go looking for another leaf and just bring it up over there ready for a rainy day. Otherwise that piece of thread will just disappear. Here we go. Let's pop the first stitch in. And then I will start the first V. And I'll just follow suit with this little cluster of leaves as well. My knot didn't follow through. Hang on, girl. Let's just woo. Here I am trying to save thread. Okay, let's come back up. Find that stitch. If I didn't finish my feather yarn, my feather stitch. Is it feather stitch? Fly stitch. Oh gosh, I hope I haven't been calling it feather stitch all the way through. Oh, for goodness sakes, I tell you. It's hard to be creative on the fly and actually verbalise what I'm even trying to do. Here comes Fudgy. Can you hear him? Fudgy! He's looking for me. The house is very quiet, so he's like come in from sitting outside in the morning sun and he's like, where are you? Does a bit of bellowing. Okay, there we go. Okay. It's amazing how that tiny little piece. Good morning, Fudge. He just popped his head in, meowed at me, turned around and left. So it's like, okay, there you are. All right, I'm off. And they're funny, aren't they? Look, I'm so close to finishing this yarn and that leaf. I'm just going to keep going. I'm sure 2/3 of you have already moved on now, but those who've hung with me 6 minutes after the hour, I think I've got one more stitch in. So that tiny little piece of yarn, it's amazing how far it can go. It's not yarn, I guess it's wool, but thread. There we go. I think I'll do one more stitch. Even if it's not a fly stitch, I might just do a couple stab stitches at the bottom to bring that leaf a little bit past the cut piece of fabric. And then in that little gap you can see between there, and there, I'll run some seed stitch in there. And that'll really finish that little spot off. Hello, Fudgy. Got a couple stitches left in this. So I'm just going to use it just with a few stab stitches because I've got that pink flower intruding a little bit there. So I can't really finish my fly stitch. So I'm just going to do some little, there we go. So if you felt like your leaf looks still a little bit flat, you can then pick up another thread in another colour, and I'd probably even go something that was a little bit shiny. Where was... and do some stitches in it, like the veins. You see that guy there? And do some, maybe even some more fly stitch, but keep them really loose and open so that they, yeah, I probably will do that. I might do that straight away after I get off camera so it looks, so I don't forget. There is another green here in my little box of tricks. I seriously have to go. It's now nearly 10 minutes. Goodness sakes. This one's slightly darker. No, it's going to blend. You wouldn't even notice it. So I need to go the lighter one. All right, guys, I better stop. For goodness, I'm going to just keep going otherwise. Let's get my little girl around the right way. Let's zoom out. Have a look at the whole piece. So we've got a really lacy thing happening here. We've got our daisy. I can finish off the little leaves here, and I still have a flower here to think about and a leaf there. My carnation is really going crazy, but I think I'll just stop the crazy and keep it simple. Finish the leaf, finish the flower, still have him. Oh, there's plenty to do. All right, guys, I'm going to say goodbye, and I will see you whenever with this piece. It's just because I feel like stitching and playing. All right, guys, look after yourselves. Bye.